What if you could run your own Netflix, your own Google Photos, your own AI assistant, your own cloud storage, all from your house, all for free, all completely under your control? Well, that's what a home lab is, and it's probably the single best thing that you can do to level up your IT skills. Or you can just stop paying for services that you don't necessarily need to pay for out in the cloud. I'm Derek. Welcome back to Tech How To's. Today, I'm going to give you a full tour of my home lab, and I'll show you why you don't need a giant server rack and a trust fund to get started with your home lab. So what is a home lab? A home lab is any personal computing environment that you set up at home to run services. You can do experiments, you can learn, and you can build things. And you can break things too. It could be a $35 Raspberry Pi. It could be an old laptop. It could be a decommissioned enterprise server you got off of eBay, or maybe your work was going to throw away. It can be an old gaming PC that was just collecting dust. The hardware doesn't necessarily matter. What matters is what you can do with the hardware. So here's why this matters. If you work in IT, or maybe you want to work in IT, you've probably noticed something. The gap between knowing about something and then actually being able to use it confidently is a humongous gap. Certifications help, reading helps, labs help, but nothing rewires your brain like running something yourself, breaking it, fixing it, and then figuring out why. Every company you'll ever work for runs some version of this stuff, whether that's Linux, Active Directory, Windows, NginX, Docker, virtualization, DNS, proxies, all of that kind of stuff. And they're not just going to give you admin access on day one as a junior help desk guy. You're going to have to slowly earn their trust and get access to things as you level up to sysadmin and higher and engineering. And so how do you learn that stuff? Well, you can pay for expensive boot camps, or you can build it at home on your own and slowly learn it. Besides the value that it brings to your career, there's a practical angle. You probably pay some money for Dropbox, iCloud, Google Photos, Netflix, maybe a VPN. What if instead of paying for all those things forever, you ran your own versions at home? And we're talking the total monthly cost of under $5 in electricity once the hardware is paid off. All right, before we get into my setup, I want to talk about the most common excuse that you're going to hear. I don't have the hardware for this. You literally don't need much. You can go get a Raspberry Pi for $30 to $50. You can get an external hard drive for $20 to $100. You can really start with an old laptop that someone's probably going to throw away or give away or selling for cheap on eBay for $50. You really don't need much to get started. It doesn't take much memory or hard drive space at all to run Docker containers. Your main investment is going to be time. That's it. My current setup is a little bit more than a basic setup that you might have, but I've been running mine for a couple years now and slowly adding to it as ideas come up. And that's what's cool about home labbing. Whenever an idea pops up, I'll spin it up and play with it, and it'll either be really useful or I'll be like, this doesn't really fit my use case or my needs, and I'll tear it down and throw it away. And that's how you learn. All right, so here's a tour of the home lab. This is how it started back in the day. This was an old small box I used as a firewall. It's got a little ARM processor in it, a little 200 gig hard drive, and now this is what I call small server. I'll show you that later. Then later on, I got this switch that was getting thrown away at work from somewhere. So it's all just 1 gig, Ethernet, 20 ports, and I use it to wire stuff up together. Whenever I was traveling or on deployment, you take Raspberry Pis and external hard drives, and there's your mobile lab. I got this computer for free off of Facebook Marketplace. You can search Facebook Marketplace for cheap old computers for $100, $200. It came with a couple hard drives in it. I got on a server and bought old hard drives, and that cost me a couple $100. That's the biggest expense I spent on it. But you definitely don't need that to start. And so now I'll tell you more about that. But that's all the home lab is. Got some extra cables here, just sitting up on a shelf in my basement, wired up. All right, so you just watched the video that I recorded on my phone of the physical boxes of my home lab, which is pretty simple, just 3 boxes. And here is the network diagram, and I'll go over it. And actually, there was one I didn't show you. But right here, over here, on my desktop, is my daily driver desktop. And, to start off, yeah, all of these numbers and names are fake and changed from, obviously, my home lab domains aren't fakehomelab.com. I just did that for the diagram in case I was going to publish this diagram out on the web. But it's similar enough, so whatever. So my main desktop here, this is a box I built in 2021, and I run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. No, 8 or 9, 5 or 6 Docker containers on it. Some of these aren't Docker containers, some are just programs. I also run virtual machines in KVM format that I can spin up on demand as I need. And this box has a 3060 in it, so a pretty decent video card from about 3 or 4 years ago. And I've got 64 gig of RAM, and I've got 3 hard drives in it. It does everything I need to on the day-to-day. As far as the containers I have running on it, I've got LiteLLM, which is API collector and manager, and so I put all my APIs for all of my various AI providers like OpenAI, Anthropic, Google Gemini, all of those into there. I send one API key over to OpenWebUI, which is like my own internal chat GPT. I have users set up for my kids. That's pretty cool. N8N is an automation platform that you can pay for out on the web, or you can set your own up for free. It's pretty cool. I'll show you some of that later. LiteLLM Postgres. This is just the database backend for the LiteLLM. Pi, this is my own personal AI infrastructure. So this is a really cool open source project. It's scaffolding on top of Claude code, and I'll talk more about that. But this is what I use for my own personal AI assistant, and I usually have features about 2 to 4 weeks before they get released out in the wild with Anthropic. Cloudflare, this is a Cloudflare tunnel that connects the internet up here. So this comes in. I have some of these are public facing, but they're behind a Cloudflare tunnel protection. And so you have to auth through Cloudflare to even get access to it. TwinGate connector is what I have set up for home lab. TwinGate is a very cool service. So instead of having to VPN into your home network, you can run TwinGate and set up TwinGate connectors on your phone, on your mobile laptop, and you can connect right into TwinGate, and it's zero trust network overlay. It's very cool. We'll talk more about that later, but this connects me into my home network. Ollama is how I run local LLM models. So I can run Qwen, I can run Llama, I can run a bunch of different ones. I can also run Claude code piped into local models. I'll show you that. So I can run LLMs for free and not have to pay for ChatGPT or Claude code. Fabric is a giant open source collection of prompts, and there's some cool ones in there that I use, and those are also built into Pi. They're related projects. They're by the same author. And then I talked about the virtual machines. I've got some virtual machines spun up. They're powered off right now, but one I'm working on is installing Ironclaw. I've got one for Arch for recording videos and projects that I make for Arch. Same thing with Ubuntu, and these all have snapshots, so I can take them and make duplicates and spin up a project, delete it. That's what I did with this one. Spun these other two up to test Ironclaw and PicoClaw, which are variants of OpenClaw out there. And this is a typo, Ubuntu 3404. We're not that far ahead. It's supposed to be 2404. I don't know how that happened, but that's nice. So that is my main daily driver. My next box, this was the one on the video. It was the computer I got for free. It's just an old gaming tower that somebody was giving away. The guy probably could have sold it for $100 or $200, and I just happened to be searching Facebook Marketplace and replied right about 2 minutes after he posted it, and he was like, "Yep, you can come have it." And so I went and got it, and free computer. So that was cool. This I run TrueNAS on, and I'll give you guys a tour of TrueNAS Scale, and I run all kinds of things in here on Docker container. The main thing I run is it's a file server. I have those 3 hard drives in a ZFS RAID. I'll show you that. And I have it set up as Samba and NFS mounts for file storage backup from my other computers on my home network. And then I run a bunch of other Docker containers. Image, which is the open source version of Google Photos. Nextcloud is my own version of Dropbox. You can sync your files. Plex is a media server. Gatia is like GitHub. It's a Git version server. So I store a lot of my code and projects there when I want to keep them private. Some of them will make it up to GitHub, some won't. Then we've got AdGuard, which is DNS server. I host all my own DNS. And then all of these services across all these boxes have their own DNS name here in AdGuard. And then those are all piped over to NginX Proxy Manager. And NginX Proxy Manager lets me write those to internal IPs. So on my home network, I can type like photos.homelab.com and go to it, and I don't have to remember all my 192.168.150.201 port 9005 or whatever for every single one of these. And I'll show you a neat way to bookmark those too later on. Heimdall, this is just a dashboard service, so you can go to one website and have nice little links to start everything. Cloudflare, I actually don't have Cloudflare on this box anymore, so I need to update that picture. Open Speed Test is just a way to test your speed. And then Uptime Kuma is a monitoring, and this service monitors all of these services and will ding me on Discord as soon as one goes down, and it's been down for over a minute. That small server, the main thing I use it for is it has a TwinGate agent on it, and so that talks back to TwinGate, so I can get to my home network anywhere. And this is also where I run a bunch of dev versions of websites. And then I also I have a Linode virtual machine, VMS, that I pay $5 a month for, and it's just running. It also has TwinGate on it, so it can be in my home network, and then I run a couple websites off of that are sometimes developed on here. And so when I'm out and about on my phone or my laptop, I can SSH right into my small server, and then I can get to any other box on my network. Some of these are firewalled off different ways and things like that for different tunnels, but that is what you can do with it. That is the network diagram of the home lab. And now let's go jump into some of these services, and I'll show you what you can do with them. All right, let's go through the TrueNAS box. So TrueNAS Scale is a really cool open source platform that you can download and install on a server, and it gives you basically a big NAS storage, which is really cool. So you can see here all your stats for your box. See, this is only running with 8 gig of RAM, an old i5 Intel Core. And then if I go here to the storage, you can see I've got 18 terabytes in a RAID Z1. So I've got 3 10 terabyte hard drives in there. And with all the RAID ZFS, it gives me about 18 terabytes of usable space. And I've used 5 so far. You can build all of your data sets for individual apps and file shares, Samba shares and NFS shares, all kinds of stuff like that. You can do all kinds of cool networking. You can back it up to other TrueNAS boxes or S3 compatible storage online. But the really cool thing here is just go to apps. And so these are all the apps that I was telling you about that I'm running on here. It makes it real easy to install. If you just go to Discover Apps, this store gets bigger and bigger every day. The other day it was like 290. Now there's 348. And you just go through this and find something that you want to try and just install it. And there's usually some setup wizards you go through. Here's all the different ones I've got running right now. Looks like they all need updates, so I'll need to update them here sometime soon. But if we go through them, let's see what I got open. So Gatia is just a private Git repo. I do a bunch of like my codes and scripts here. Agents, I've got dot files backed up. I've got a bunch of stuff from my AI projects that auto back up every time I close my AI on here. And so that works. AdGuard is just a DNS server. So you can see here it's got 12,000 some odd blocks. This is pointing to, I believe, 1.1.1, yeah, and 9.9.9. So those are privacy-based DNS servers, and it's blocking a whole bunch of all the spam malware crap. Heimdall is just a dashboard solution, so you can add little different cards for each of your things in your home network. So you can make it like a starting place, which is kind of cool. I think I need to add a few more in here. And there's different dashboards. I might try out a different one later. Open Speed Test. This is just one you can run just like speed test. Yeah, so you can just click start and it'll run a speed test on your network. So that's pretty cool. Uptime Kuma. This is where you can set up monitoring. And so here's my 3 boxes, my Arch box, my TrueNAS box, and my small server. And I've got connectors for each one of the Docker containers or services running on there, and they're just basically like little pings that go, and you can see they check the address and the port. They will message me on Discord if they go down. So you can see here about 13 days ago something went offline for some reason, so it started messaging me. So that's kind of a useful tool. Not enterprise level alerting, but it's still a decent level of alerting. Image is your Google Photos replacement, so you can host it. You can set up apps on your phone to back up all of your photos. You can copy in all of your old external hard drives. And so I've been doing that, collecting all of my wife's old hard drives and backing up phones from everywhere. And I think I've got, 330 gigabytes of photos backed up from 20 something years of photos. That's kind of cool. NginX proxy is the other half of the DNS server. So in here, if I go to filters, DNS rewrites, I can put in all of these like NginX or kuma.derekreason.com and give myself internal IP addresses instead of having to type in all these things. Pipes them all over here to NginX proxy, and then NginX proxy will go and host them all and get SSL certificates for them all and map them to the appropriate ports. And so that's pretty cool. So all of my addresses work. So right here, I go to my home lab and I've got all of them labeled out by their domain name. And now you might say, well, what happens if your DNS server is down? Well, then you do this little trick. So here in my home lab, I've got this folder called old local leaks, and I've got them all named out by their IP address and their port. So I can go type it manually, or I can browse to them all by their IP addresses in case my DNS is ever down. So the DNS is nice and handy, so I don't have to remember all the IP addresses and ports, but I've also got them there as a backup if for some reason my DNS server is down, or I'm troubleshooting something, or I'm upgrading my lab or something. Nextcloud, this is your Dropbox replacement. So you can host your own private Dropbox on your server. You can install this on your phone as well. You can put it on everything, and it's just cloud syncing files, just like Dropbox is. You can do all that kind of stuff. It's really cool. LiteLLM is where I bring in all of my API keys for like OpenAI, Anthropic, Grok, Gemini, MindMax. So you can see I've got all these different APIs, or all these different models pulled in via their APIs. It tells you their cost here, the in and out costs, and then I just send one key over to my OpenWebUI, and then that gives me my own graphical ChatGPT style window, and I can set up users in it. I've got users set up for my kids. You can pick your different models up here. You can even run comparisons and be like, hey, let's do GPT 4.1 versus Claude Sonnet 4.5, and be like, tell me about the weather in Chicago tomorrow. And they'll both go and look it up, and you can see whose response is better. And it looks like, oh, rate limit error exceeded my quota. So I need to go check my API for OpenAI. It may have expired, or they may want me to put $5 more on it or something. So I'll need to go check on that. But that's what you can do with it. It's pretty cool. And then Plex, it's pretty self-explanatory. Media server, so you can host your movies, TV shows, photos, music, all kinds of stuff. Really cool and really neat. So that is the TrueNAS side of it. And then here in a second, I will show you the Archbox stuff. Okay, so that was the TrueNAS box we just went over all the services on that. So now we'll go over my...
That's the full picture. Anything you want to dig into deeper?
That's my AI talking to me, so I'll show you that here in a second. So that is Pi talking. So here on the Archbox, we'll go over that, show you some of this stuff. So some of them I showed you, the LiteLLM a second ago. That was actually hosted on this box, even though we were going over it on there, so that was my mistake. This is Pi, personal AI infrastructure. This is a scaffolding that goes on top of Claude Code. And like I just said, tell me about the features of Pi 4.03. And it talks to me and does Claude Code. I've got this cool status line. I can see how much context I've got left for my session or for the week with Claude Code. I can see all of my memory sessions and all kinds of cool stuff. It's got Fabric built into it. Say, show me the Fabric patterns.
Showing Fabric patterns.
N8N is an automation thing you can set up and do. So like this N8N here goes and pulls a bunch of news from like Hacker News, Bleeping Computer, Krebs on Security, the AI rundown. It sorts them, removes duplicates, and then sends them to my Discord. So that's a cool automation that works. I've got one for other ones for email newsletters. That's my Discord tech one. I've got one that
235 patterns total. Security and extract categories are the deepest benches.
Yep, we've ran 2,663 automations, and so only 126 have failed, and that's usually when I'm setting them up and testing them. I've got some other templates ones I'm working on, and anything you want to do with automation stuff you can do in there. Here's Pi, and said, talking about the Fabric, said you got 235 patterns, and these are just a collection of AI prompts, which are super handy. I use the Extract Wisdom one quite a bit to pull up summaries of YouTube videos, which is pretty cool. We already talked about LiteLLM in the background, and OpenWebUI is the front end for that. Cloudflare, that's just the tunnel connector from Cloudflare for your front end. TwinGate's the network. And so I'll show you Ollama as well. We've got these different models, 5.4, Quinn, Gemma, and Llama. And these are different sizes. So this one's 14 billion. And so you can do local AI stuff. You can also say Ollama launch Claude with this model. So I can use my local models, but use the Claude interface, or you can use ChatGPT's codex if you like that one. So those are some of the cool things you can do with that. These are, if I do Docker PS, these are some of the Docker containers that are running on here. So there's LiteLLM, OpenWebUI, N8N, the Postgres, TwinGate, and Cloudflare. So that's pretty much everything that's running as Docker containers. Then I mentioned the virtual machines, which are just running here in Virtual Machine Manager. And that's the list of those. And I can fire those up whenever I want to do a full OS thing versus a smaller Docker containers. And then if we jump over here to small server, which is just another tab here in my thing, and then I do Docker PS, there's my TwinGate connector. And this is just a cool little server that's not got much in it, but it's not doing much, but it's a very useful little box. Oh, and then I got the Linode, which is one more server over here. Always cool to have a external host and then connect to your home network. I can get into my home network wherever I'm at, traveling around the world. I can get to my websites. I've got websites hosted on Cloudflare. You can do all kinds of neat stuff. You don't need to build anything this big or complicated. And this isn't that complicated. These are just some of the cool tools that I like and have discovered and use and are very useful to me. And so sometimes I'll find stuff like on the TrueNAS, I'll go through that application, or I'll find somebody's YouTube video or say, hey, try this in your home lab, or this application self-hosted, and I'll go try it out, and I'll either adopt it and keep it, or I'll decide that's not useful or helpful to me, and I'll throw it away. And you can rebuild and redo your home network as much as or as little as you like. So sometimes it sits here for months and I don't use parts of it very much, and sometimes I'm in there tweaking every day, depending on what mood I'm in and what kind of projects I'm working on. That is some of the stuff that you can do with the home lab. So that was the tour of my home lab. So maybe you're watching this and you're thinking, well, I want to do that. How do I do that? How do I get started? You know what? Go find an old spare machine, an old laptop, an old desktop, Raspberry Pi, whatever, it doesn't matter. Go download Ubuntu server and install it. Go download Proxmox. Both are free. Both have great documentation. Then you can install a Docker service. Go find one little Docker thing that you want. You can fire up Nextcloud or Uptime Kuma. Go find one that you'll actually use. Sometimes you can get on YouTube and search coolest home labs or how to start a home lab. There'll be other videos and lists of solutions you can use. And then just set stuff up and try it and break it, and then learn how to fix it. And get on Google or Gemini and be searching, how do I fix this? I broke this in my home lab. And it'll tell you, and you'll get practice in the command line and running that kind of stuff. Hey, thanks for watching. I want to say, if you guys found this useful, go ahead and hit subscribe. I appreciate that. I post new tech how-tos semi-often, and this is just some of the kind of content that I cover. And if you also like that, you'll like my tech updates, emails, and videos that go out, as well as stuff on my newsletter. And you can check out my website, derekcreason.com, where I post updates as well, and any cool projects that I'm working on that are on my GitHub as well. So go check it out. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.